I didn't mean for it to go that far. His fingers were already under the hem of my shirt when I whispered, "He's upstairs." But I didn't stop him. I should have. The house creaked as if the walls themselves knew how wrong this was. My husband, Daniel, was asleep 2 floors above us, dead to the world. And yet there I was, leaning back against the fridge, breath caught somewhere between guilt and desire as another man, Ethan, traced the curve of my waist like he had every right to. It didn't start with touches. It started with glances. Stolen ones, quiet ones, the kind that linger just a beat too long. We all say we know when something's beginning. But the truth is, you only know once it's too late to stop it. He wasn't a stranger. He used to mow the lawn in our Riverbrook neighborhood. Then he started fixing things. A cabinet. The porch light. A faucet that didn't even need replacing. And then one night Daniel invited him in for a beer. That was the first time Sarah, noticed it, the way he looked at me when I reached up for a wine glass. The way his eyes didn't look away fast enough. The way mine didn't either. At first I told myself it was harmless. I was lonely, not reckless. But loneliness is slippery. It doesn't ask permission. It shows up in the way you linger in the kitchen even when you're not hungry. The way you dress a little differently, just in case someone notices. The way your heart beats a little faster when someone other than Daniel laughs at your jokes. Ethan was younger too. Not by much, but enough to feel like a second chance. A what-if that had grown legs and walked through my front door wearing worn jeans and calloused hands. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside Daniel staring at the ceiling, wondering what it would feel like if Ethan's laugh came from beside me instead. I wasn't in love. I wasn't stupid either. But I was starting to imagine things that made me bite my lip in the dark. I shifted away from Daniel's body heat, not out of resentment, but because it didn't make me feel anything. The next morning I found a note on the counter. Light in the hallways flickering. I can come fix it this week. Just text. No signature. No smiley face. Just a quiet suggestion. The paper smelled faintly of cedar and something else, maybe cologne, maybe sawdust. Maybe anticipation. I folded the note in half and hid it under a magazine. I didn't tell Daniel. I washed the dishes. I swept the floor twice. I stared at myself in the hallway mirror longer than I should have, wondering if I looked different, wondering if I looked like someone who was about to lie. And when I texted Ethan that night, "Tomorrow afternoon, he'll be out," I felt the first layer of guilt stick to me like humidity. My thumbs hovered for a second before I hit send. But there was no trembling. No second thoughts. Just that strange rush like standing barefoot on a cold tile floor, knowing something was about to break. I didn't sleep. I watched the clock instead. I counted the breaths between Daniel's snores. And when the sun finally rose and painted the blinds with soft gold, I knew I had already made my decision the night before. Not with my fingers, with my silence. Ethan arrived at 2:14 p.m. I watched the digital clock change from 2:13 to 2:14 like it mattered, like there was still time to pretend I didn't know what I was doing. I'd already wiped the kitchen counters twice, sprayed perfume behind my knees, changed into something casual, but just tight enough. My hands were shaking when I opened the door, but my smile wasn't. "Hey," he said. Just that. One word. But his eyes swept over me with the quiet hunger of someone who'd already imagined this twice. "Hallway lights still flickering," I said, stepping aside. "I'll take a look." He didn't ask how long Daniel would be gone. He already knew. I led him down the hall and stood at the edge of the frame like a ghost in my own house. He unscrewed the fixture slowly, carefully, making small talk about wiring and humidity, but I wasn't listening. I was watching the way his shirt lifted slightly when he reached up, the way his shoulder blades shifted under cotton, the soft creak of the step stool under his weight. There was nothing overt in the moment, no line crossed, just tension, pressure, something alive in the space between us. He finished quickly, testing the switch with a click that sounded louder than it should have. The light flickered once, then stayed on. "Fixed," he said. "Thanks." But neither of us moved. I should have offered him water, or said goodbye, or walked away. But my feet stayed planted, and he didn't leave. Instead, he stepped down, still holding the screwdriver, his breath just a little too fast. His arm brushed mine. It could have been an accident. Should have been. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. I nodded. Then he reached up slowly, gently, and tucked a piece of hair behind my ear. My breath caught. Not because of the touch, but because of the way it felt expected. Like we'd rehearsed this in our dreams. "We shouldn't," I whispered. "I know." He didn't try to kiss me. Not then. He just stood there, eyes locked on mine, waiting, letting me decide. It was the waiting that broke me, because part of me wanted him to take control. To be the one who ruined everything so I wouldn't have to choose. But he didn't. He stayed still. And I was the one who leaned in. The kiss wasn't frantic. It was slow. Hesitant. Terrifying in its tenderness. Ethan's lips pressed to mine with the kind of caution that said he'd been thinking about this too long. My hands found his chest before I realized what I was doing. His heartbeat was fast. So was mine. Somewhere a neighbor's dog barked. A lawnmower started in Riverbrook. And in my kitchen my mouth opened to a man who wasn't Daniel. His hands slid to my waist, then paused, waiting again. I pulled him closer. My back hit the counter with a soft thud. There was still time to stop. Still time to say this was a mistake. But I didn't. He lifted my shirt slowly. Not like he owned me. Like he was unwrapping something fragile. My breath hitched when his knuckles brushed my skin. "He's upstairs," I murmured again, as if saying it aloud would make it more real. "I know," he whispered. But he didn't stop. And I didn't push him away. It's strange what you remember in moments like that. Not the guilt. Not even the heat. But the details, his breath hitting my collarbone, the faint scent of sawdust on his shirt, the way the sunlight caught in the strands of his hair as he leaned in. We didn't rush. It wasn't desperate. It was quiet, focused, like we were trying to memorize the shape of what we were about to ruin. His hands moved with care, fingers grazing my ribs, thumbs tracing lines I didn't know had been aching to be found. I couldn't tell if my skin was burning or frozen. I just knew it wasn't Daniel's touch, and that made it worse and better. He kissed me again, deeper this time, and I sank into it like I'd been holding my breath for years. My legs wobbled. I held on to the back of his neck, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. And he let me. He let me have the illusion of control while his body moved with unspoken certainty. The room felt louder than it should have been. The hum of the fridge, the soft rustle of my shirt slipping off my shoulder, the sound of the ceiling fan ticking slowly overhead like it was counting every second I'd regret. When he lifted me onto the counter, my knees instinctively parted, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a wife. I felt like a woman being wanted, desired, not for dinner plans or laundry or schedules, but for the curve of my hips, the arch of my back, the way I whispered Ethan's name like it was a sin. His fingers tangled in my hair, not hard, just enough to make me gasp. I felt myself slipping into a version of me I'd forgotten existed, the girl who used to close her eyes and dream of danger, who once believed touch could speak louder than words. She came alive again in my kitchen, with a man who didn't belong to me while the one who did slept 2 floors above us, oblivious. We didn't go all the way, not yet, but we went far enough that when he finally pulled away, my lips felt swollen, my chest heaving, my thighs trembling. He looked at me like he wanted to keep going, like he could, like he would. But then something flickered behind his eyes, restraint maybe, or fear, or the cruel echo of consequences. He helped me down gently, like I was something that might break, and I was, just not in the way he thought. I didn't speak, I couldn't. Words would have made it real. So I turned my back, adjusted my shirt, and stared out the kitchen window like nothing had happened. I could hear him behind me, breathing heavy, his hand running through his hair, then footsteps, soft ones, retreating, and finally the click of the door as he let himself out without saying goodbye. I didn't move, not for a long time. I just stood there, heart pounding, mouth still tasting him, wondering who I had just become. Upstairs the house remained quiet, Daniel still sleeping, the bed still warm with his scent, the same man I had promised forever to, and all I could think was I crossed a line today, and I didn't feel sorry, not yet. That night I lay beside Daniel in the dark, pretending the weight on my chest was sleep. His breathing was steady, mouth slightly open like always, one arm draped over my hip like muscle memory. He had no idea. He didn't ask why I showered twice that day, or why I hadn't said much at dinner. He just smiled at me the way he always did, comfortable, gentle, unchanging. That kind of love is supposed to be safe, and maybe that's why I felt so restless under the covers, my body clean, but my skin still humming in all the places he hadn't touched in years. I stared at the ceiling and tried to hear only the fan, not the memory of Ethan's breath in my ear, not the sound I made when his hand slid beneath my waistband, like he belonged there. The days that followed were hollow. I avoided mirrors. I folded laundry with fingers that still remembered how Ethan held my hips. I cooked dinner, I made the bed, I even kissed Daniel goodbye before work. But everything felt like imitation, like I was playing the role of someone else's wife. I tried to forget, I tried to let it be a one-time mistake, but forgetting is hard when temptation has your number. And Ethan didn't wait long. The next message came 3 days later, just a single word, coffee. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered, my mouth was dry. I was supposed to say no, but my fingers typed before my brain could stop them. Tonight. After he sleeps. I turned off the screen and tossed the phone aside, but my heart was already racing. There was no turning back. I had opened the door once, and Ethan was still standing there. That night the rain came, not loud, just a steady slow drizzle tapping against the bedroom window like a warning. Daniel was snoring lightly, one leg half hanging off the bed. I watched him for a moment. He looked older in sleep, softer, trusting. And then I slipped out from under the blanket like a ghost, padded down the hall barefoot, and opened the door to Ethan, who waited in the rain. He didn't say anything when he stepped inside, clothes damp, hair tousled. He just looked at me with those same eyes, that same pull, and I let him in like I had the first time. He followed me into the guest bathroom, the one with no windows, no creaky floorboards, just tile and silence and secrets. We didn't speak. Not even when his hand found mine in the dark and lifted it to his chest. His shirt was soaked through, clinging to the lines of his body. I reached for the hem and pulled it up slowly, like this was something sacred. He let me. And then he did the same to me. We moved like people who had done this before but still couldn't believe it was happening. His fingers found my back. My nails found his shoulder. The mirror fogged fast, blurring everything but sensation. My breath hit the cold tile wall. His mouth found the hollow of my neck. Every movement was quiet, careful, measured, until it wasn't. Until I grabbed the edge of the sink and he pressed against me from behind, and everything I thought I wouldn't do, I did. No one called out. No one knocked. But that only made it more dangerous, more unreal. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just let it happen, feeling everything and nothing all at once. When it was over, Ethan stepped back first. I faced the mirror, hair wild, lipstick gone, pupils wide. I didn't recognize the woman looking back. She was flushed and undone and alive. And I hated how much I missed her. We didn't speak for 4 days. No texts. No glances across the street in Riverbrook. He didn't come by to check the porch light. I didn't invent a new excuse to see him. But Ethan was everywhere. In the chair he once sat in. In the scent of sweat and wood left faintly on the guest towel. In my own body, which had begun to betray me. I'd pause at red lights and find myself thinking about the way his fingers had hooked into my waistband, like a question he already knew the answer to. At night, Daniel held me, and I let him. But my eyes stayed open, locked on the ceiling, like it might split open and swallow me whole. It wasn't love, I need to say that. I didn't want Ethan in that forever kind of way. I wanted him in the way you want things that hurt. The way fire draws your hand just close enough to feel the heat. He reminded me of something I'd buried, how it felt to be wanted so much that words were optional. That silence could make your skin ache. And the worst part, I didn't want to stop. I wanted to fall further. I wanted to feel myself disappear a little more. The next time wasn't planned. It was late, past midnight. Daniel had driven out to his brother's house in Westfield for a last-minute emergency, left in a rush with his overnight bag and a distracted kiss. I stood in the doorway, watching his taillights disappear, and knew before I closed the door that I'd already decided. Not 30 minutes later, I heard the knock. Not loud, just 2 soft taps. Ethan stood there in a gray hoodie, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. I didn't speak. I just opened the door wider. This time we didn't go to the kitchen or the bathroom. We climbed the narrow stairs slowly, silently, and entered the room that used to be my art studio before life got busy and I started letting dust collect on my easel. The moonlight leaked in through the skylight, painting everything in silver. I locked the door behind us. Ethan took off his hoodie first. I pulled off my shirt second. There was no conversation. No, are you sure? He was already sure. So was I. We didn't make it to the couch. We ended up on the floor, surrounded by paint-splattered drop cloths and the smell of turpentine. His hands were firmer this time, less hesitant. Mine were bolder too, pressing into his shoulder blades, wrapping around the back of his neck, pulling him in deeper. We kissed like people who had crossed a line and didn't care who was drawing it anymore. At one point he stopped, forehead resting against mine. Our breath tangled between us. "You're shaking," he murmured. "I know," I said, voice low. "I don't want you to stop." That was the moment. The one I would replay later. When I said it out loud. When I made it clear this wasn't just an accident anymore. He kissed me harder. My back arched. I bit down on my lip to muffle a sound I shouldn't have made. The floor was cold, but I didn't notice. All I could feel was his body pressing into mine, the rhythm of our movement, the way we fit together in that too fast, too wrong, too perfect kind of way. After, we lay there, tangled in each other, staring up at the ceiling. I could hear the wind outside, the creak of the house settling, the blood still roaring in my ears. "Are we done?" Ethan asked softly, not looking at me. I didn't answer, because I didn't know what I meant by silence anymore. I started locking doors more often, not because I was afraid of being caught. Because I was afraid of how easily I had stopped caring if I was. Daniel noticed small things. The guest towel, always damp. The faint scent of aftershave that didn't match his. A receipt from the Riverbrook hardware store I couldn't explain. But he didn't ask. Or maybe he didn't want the answer. That's the thing about marriages, we stop looking closely when the truth might break what's left. And I was breaking it, piece by piece, every time I let Ethan back into my body like it was his to borrow. It wasn't just lust anymore. It wasn't love either. It was a hunger. One that came without warning in the middle of folding laundry, or while boiling water for pasta. I'd think of the way Ethan looked at me right before he unbuttoned my jeans. The way his knuckles dragged against my thighs like he was memorizing heat. I told myself it would stop when the guilt got too loud. But it didn't. The guilt didn't roar. It whispered. And I kept lowering the volume. The last time it happened was in the garage. Daniel was upstairs, nursing a headache. I told him I'd left something in the car. I don't know if he heard the truth in the click of the door behind me. The garage was dim, the only light from the motion sensor above the shelves. I sat in the driver's seat with the door ajar, heart thudding, hands cold. Ethan slid into the passenger side without a word. We didn't kiss. We just looked at each other for a full minute, the air too thick to breathe. Then his hand found mine, and I placed it on my thigh like we'd done this forever. We didn't talk. The gear shift dug into my hip. My back hit the seat. His mouth found mine. It was desperate this time. Fast. Dangerous. I let him pull my dress up. I didn't stop him when his fingers pushed past hesitation. The garage echoed softly with breath and rustling fabric and the sound of my heel hitting the floor mat. I pressed my head back and bit down on my knuckle because I couldn't scream, not this close. Not now. When it was over, Ethan pulled away slower than usual. He rested his forehead against mine, eyes closed, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the right version of it. I ran my hand over his chest one last time. I didn't say goodbye. I just climbed out of the car and went back upstairs. Daniel was asleep. The room smelled like eucalyptus and shampoo. I slipped under the covers, my skin still warm from betrayal. I turned away from him and stared at the wall. That was the last time I saw Ethan. The one who touched me like I was fire and he wanted to burn. He didn't call. I didn't text. Something had shifted. Maybe we both felt at the edge of something about to collapse. Maybe that was the point all along. But even now, weeks later, I still find myself staring out the window at night, wondering if Ethan will knock again and hating that I might open the door if he does. It didn't end because we grew tired of each other. It ended because silence grew louder than our need. I told myself it was for the best. That I'd stop waking in the middle of the night, reaching for someone who wasn't there. But Ethan's absence had a shape, long and warm and coiled like a secret I still held under my tongue. Daniel started to smile more again. Maybe he thought the distance in me had finally thawed. Maybe he believed my sudden tenderness was love instead of guilt. I kissed him more often. I cooked his favorite meals. I held his hand on the couch while we watched movies I wasn't paying attention to. I played the part of someone grateful. And maybe I was. But not for the reasons he thought. Some nights, I dreamt of Ethan. Not the affair itself. Just moments. The way he breathed against my skin. The way his hands paused before undressing me, like asking permission without words. In one dream, I told him to leave, and he did. In another, I begged him to stay, and he kissed me with so much certainty I cried in my sleep. I would wake drenched in sweat, the sheets tangled around my legs, my chest hollow with something I couldn't name. I stopped checking my phone. I deleted Ethan's number, then added it back from memory. I typed out messages and erased them. My body moved through days like it had forgotten how to want anything. Until the night I saw him again. It was a friend's birthday. Daniel and I were invited together, a small dinner party at someone's renovated loft in downtown Riverbrook. I wore a backless dress I hadn't touched in years. Not for Ethan. For myself. Or maybe for the ghost of someone who used to look at me like I mattered. We walked in, wine in hand, laughter easy. And then I saw Ethan. Across the room. Button-down shirt, sleeves rolled, laughing at something someone said. He hadn't seen me yet. But I saw everything in that second, how much I missed him. How much I hated missing him. How my skin still remembered the heat of his breath in places I could never speak of. He looked up. Our eyes locked. I froze. It was a split second. But it unraveled me. Daniel touched my back, guiding me to the hors d'oeuvres. I smiled like nothing cracked. I laughed at the right jokes. But I could feel Ethan watching me. Every time I glanced sideways, he was there, just a few feet away, close enough to touch if the room disappeared. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. My pulse said everything. Later, in the hallway outside the bathroom, Ethan passed behind me. No one else there. Just us and the hum of a distant stereo. He didn't touch me. Just leaned in close enough for me to feel the air shift. You look beautiful, he said softly. I turned, heart beating in my throat. This isn't real anymore, I whispered. It never stopped being real, he replied. Then he walked away. And I stood there, hands shaking, breath shallow, realizing that all the distance in the world couldn't erase the part of me that still ached for Ethan. We didn't speak again after that night. Not in words. But in the weeks that followed, I carried Ethan with me like a bruise beneath my ribs, tender, hidden, impossible to forget. I thought it would fade. I thought seeing him and walking away would give me closure, some quiet victory over whatever had taken root between us. But I was wrong. It wasn't over. Not inside me. It echoed in small things. The way I lingered longer in the mirror. The way I bit my lip when no one was watching. The way I stood too still in the hallway when I heard a knock at the door, even when I knew it wasn't Ethan. I started dreaming about being caught, not in bed, not in the act, but in something simpler, Daniel walking in as I was smiling at my phone, or hearing the way my voice changed when I lied. And in every dream, he didn't shout, he didn't cry. He just looked at me like he didn't know who I was. And that was worse, because deep down, I wasn't sure I did either. I used to think affairs were black and white. That people cheated because something was broken. That it was about sex or escape. But mine was about something quieter. I didn't want a different man. I wanted to feel something again, and Ethan, he made me feel like I still existed beyond my role as Sarah, as wife, as planner, as keeper of calendars and grocery lists. I considered confessing once. Late one night, curled next to Daniel while he slept, I watched his hand twitch in a dream and thought maybe honesty could wash it clean. But I didn't. Because I knew I wasn't asking for forgiveness. I was asking to be punished. And that wasn't fair to either of us. So instead I buried it. Like we do with all dangerous things. One afternoon, months later, I passed by Ethan's truck on my way to the Riverbrook grocery store. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did and chose not to. Either way, I didn't stop. I didn't look again. But something in my chest twisted, like the end of a story that still wanted to be written. I went home. I made dinner. I laughed at Daniel's story about work. And when I looked across the table, I tried to believe I belonged there. That I hadn't left pieces of myself in a garage, in a bathroom mirror, on a floor splattered with paint and sin. I don't know if Ethan thinks of me. I don't know if he watches the same sky and wonders what we would have become if we hadn't stopped. But I do know this. It wasn't just the undressing. It was what came before. The pause. The breath. The permission. The feeling of being seen completely, without demand or duty. And sometimes, when I am alone, I replay it. Not the heat or the skin or the whispered name. But the moment Ethan's hands hovered at my hips, waiting. That quiet hesitation before everything changed. That was the real betrayal. This time, I won't open the door again. But I won't forget what it felt like to want to. If you were Sarah, would you have stopped the first time? Or would you have waited for Ethan again? Subscribe to Secrets and Lies for more whispered confessions of forbidden want.